Hello, and welcome to the 10th podcast, that is to say, Thriving in Technology. Your hosts are Sam Olsen and Cecilia Taylor, both members of the influence marketing team at NetApp. Today's episode is all about the new reality for millions of people working from home. We are welcoming our friends, Mercedes Adams, Chris Olsen, and Matthew Underhill to share their experiences with us. We'll let them introduce themselves briefly before we dive in. Let's start with Mercedes. Tell us what you do and how people can find you, the Twitters.
Hi, I'm Mercedes Adams, NetApp. I'm responsible for employee education. I focus on professional development for our employees and partner with our HR team in delivering that. I'm also on our Global Women in Technology Steering Committee, and you can find me on the Twitterverse at Mercedes_Adams.
Perfect. Welcome, Mercedes. Chris Olsen, how about if you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where we can find you?
Hi, I'm Chris Olsen. I'm a solution architect at Los Alamos National Laboratory. We're a Department of Energy lab in northern New Mexico. My main focus is really just enabling some of the great work that the scientists and other employees at the laboratory do through technology. And that's pretty neat stuff. I enjoy it. The easiest way to find me is on Twitter at ColsonNM.
Good. And Matthew, how about you?
Hello. So I'm Matthew Underhill. I'm based out of Liverpool in the UK. I work for a company called Alfred H. Knight. We also do scientific support, but that's to the mining industry. I look after all of their IT infrastructure, as well as now all of the IT support services on a global scale. And you can find me on Twitter at UnderKenya, on LinkedIn, Matthew Underhill, and at my website, matthewunderhill.io.
Oh, Chris Olsen, you neglected to mention your website. You have a blog as well.
I do elevatedmusings.blogspot.com.
Blogspot.
It's been neglected these last 2 weeks.
Well, I think there is good reason for that, which we'll get into in a little bit. And Matthew, you neglected to mention something also very important. You are the dad of Bo. Everybody knows who Bo is, right?
Yep.
You want to tell us a little bit about your precious puppy?
My precious puppy. She is apparently the NetApp mascot dog and possibly A-Team's biggest canine fan.
Yes.
She very much loves all of that, and she's been picking up quite a lot of Twitter likes and lots of love.
Yeah, she's a celebrity.
So I'm hearing.
So, all right, let's get started with the real topic we wanted to address today. Some really interesting stuff that we're all dealing with. So, Mercedes, you've been doing an awful lot to support NetApp employees and our WIC community as they make this transition. And I know this has been difficult for you personally. Can you share what's been going on, what you've learned that's helping you, and what you're doing to help others?
Sam, thanks for the invitation to share. So at NetApp, just about 3 weeks ago, our learning services team was asked to jump into action, partnering with HR to help deliver a working from home series for our employees to help them be more productive and effective in working from home. We wanted to help equip people really, and also connect and allow them to share what they're feeling, talk about their personal well-being and how they're coping. So that's something that we've been driving over the last several weeks, and we've had over 10,000 touch points with our employee population through a series of leader-led town halls. Now, that was a bit of a scramble to action because, as you know, we're in unpredictable times. And I think at first we had one day we asked all of our employees to work from home. And then we rapidly realized, oh my goodness, with all the shelter in place orders that are happening around the world, our entire workforce needed to transition to be fully remote. So, personally, as a knowledge worker, I've worked from home 1 or 2 days a week, and usually I considered those my down days where I was like disconnected, right? I working on a project and very focused. But now in this switch where it's mandatory for everyone, I mean, there was a lot to think about, right? Just from my ergonomics to do I have groceries to survive? And then this whole concept of social disconnection, right? I know we're supposed to socially distance, but for me, personally, I'm isolated. I'm here at home with my cats 24/7, and that is not the usual way that I've been working. So just personally, after 7 days of this working from home, I think everybody was adjusting to the new norm and trying to figure out how to cope. And many of my peers and coworkers are now at home with a full family. That means a spouse, kids, dogs, cats, fish, right? And we're all trying to navigate how we do our jobs, teach children, and seem somewhat like take care of our mental health. I was getting on a lot of calls with people who would start out their Zoom meeting by saying, oh, I'm going to kill my spouse. Oh, my kids are so getting on my nerves. And here I am, just stroking my cat and going, that's not my situation. I shared with you that I woke up one day in tears. I'm just going to be totally transparent and just start with the moment of vulnerability, is that after listening to people kind of talking about their situations, I got grumpy. I got upset. My significant other, I'm in an international relationship. And when Trump announced the travel ban, he literally banned my boyfriend. And so I have no control over that. And I was listening to my coworkers saying, it's so terrible to be trapped with my family when my family can't be together. And I was, kind of cynical. I'll tell you, I had a moment where I told somebody, don't talk to me about fun right now. And then I saw Trevor Noah do a little skit over Zoom with his remote correspondent on The Daily Show, Desi, and she talked about, what it means to be trapped with your whole family in a one-bedroom apartment in New York.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I had this reverse moment of empathy, and I had to stop thinking about myself and my own situation and what I was missing, and be grateful for the fact that I could redesign my whole work life around myself and not have all of these other elements to take into consideration. That doesn't change the fact that, I miss my family, but it does help me have a lot more empathy for what everyone in the workforce is going through right now, because this is a disaster for us in a lot of ways. And we need to start to think about people's personal well-being, along with how do we expect our workforce to show up, and how do they need to communicate and participate and deliver business outcomes.
Wow, you covered a lot there. I'm in a very different situation in that I have worked from home since I joined NetApp 12 years ago. And even prior to that, I seem to have taken up a career with West Coast companies as a rule. So this has been the normal for me. But I'm facing kind of a different challenge in that now that everyone is working from home and no one is commuting, so there's no coming into the office around 10 o'clock, in California, and leaving around 3 to beat traffic. Everyone is on from 7:30 in the morning Pacific time until 6:30 at night Pacific time. So my day has changed. I used to be able to get stuff done when everybody else was in the car. In fact, I would often do calls with people who were commuting in the car, and that was fine. But now, between the opportunity to have a longer day, I think people need that connection. And so phone calls are replacing the water cooler conversations. And the plus side is I'm being brought into a lot more of those conversations now because I can be, because I'm being included in them. Versus the things that happen, during the day that I am not privy to. So that's the plus side. But I don't think there's any one of us who isn't having to make some kind of an adjustment. I have, in fact, my stepson, Sebastian, is here because Wesleyan told everybody to go home and do their classes virtually. But his girlfriend is Chinese. She could not go home. So she is here as well. So my household has changed for the better. She made a delicious hot pot for us all last night. My stomach is still trying to recover from it because it was incredibly spicy, but boy, going down, it was amazing. I posted photos everywhere. I made a big deal out of it. And anyway, now I'm dealing with the repercussions. But anyway, Cecilia, I think you are also in kind of a new normal. Of course, we all are. But, what's your situation like at home?
Well, it's a little different for me in that my children are teenagers, or one's a preteen, as I mentioned early. She's 12 and about to turn 13.
I was going to say 12 going on 20, though, at least.
I mean, she's been a teenager since she was 2. And for the most part, not much has changed in my day-to-day, other than I work a little bit farther out from the office. I'm in Tracy, California, so I'm about 60 miles or so from the office. So I typically would work from home as my norm 2 to 3 days a week, preferably 3, with going into the office the other 2 days. And those 2 days that I would go into the office were, really long days for me, where I'm getting on a train. So I've got to be up at 5 in the morning.
Horrible days, horrible.
Got to be up at 5 in the morning to get to the office by 8, and then leaving the office at 3:15 to make sure that I get home by 6. So working from home full time for me has definitely given me back all of that commute time, for sure. I'm an early riser, so I tend to want to be at my desk at 7:30 in the morning anyway. I literally sleep a little bit more than I would have before. I've always had a dedicated space in my house for my office that has a door.
Yes,
so
thank God
I have
for
the
doors.
ability to, to kind of close off from the rest of the home when I'm working from home. So for the most part, there hasn't been too much of an adjustment for me, other than
Well, one thing I've noticed, Cecilia, is that because you are not getting on a train at, God knows how early, and, getting home so late, before the days that you were working from home, I would see you in a robe every now and then. Okay. And she'd see me in a robe, but now she is gussying herself up. I mean, she's got the lipstick, the jewelry, the matching ensemble. I mean, she is putting me to shame. Anyway, I stole your spot there.
I would like to say that no one else has ever seen me in a robe on camera other than Sam.
We're besties. We're besties.
Sure
it's okay.
That we clarify that for our listening audience.
Okay.
So I know, Mercedes, that you mentioned your experience and the things that you've been doing for NetApp as we've transitioned to this full work from home scenario. But could you tell us a little bit more about some of those projects specifically?
Yeah, so I'll tackle it from, the overall framework of this work from home focus for NetApp as a company. And I'm in the learning services organization. We're looking at educational resources. And so we have built an entire COVID-19 website with resources for employees to learn more about the tools and technology, with tremendous support from our IT organization. So we are upskilling everyone to be efficient on how they use resources like Teams, Zoom. We've created new brand approved backgrounds for people who've got the green screen and want those virtual images. So that whole idea of having everything on a page where people can go and find the resources has been one theme. The other thing that we're doing is focusing on the engagement, so the employee experience, with leader-led weekly town halls. And so we kicked those off very quickly, and it's leaders having conversation, talking about how are they coping, what are their well-being strategies, and then switching into how do we work differently? What does it look like to be a fully remote sales organization? What does it mean for teams that need in finance to collaborate on things like, next year's fiscal plan? So we're making sure that we're having those conversations, connecting with the employees. And then we've brought in a series of webcasts with experts. And so organizations like McKinsey, Harvard, there's an excellent change management organization called Brute that are having webinars almost on a daily basis. And those topics that they're focusing on, not just employee well-being, but also how do you lead and manage remote teams. And let's talk about the situation that we're in, because this is not like, hey, we just transitioned to a fully remote workforce. And there are lots of companies that have a fully remote workforce, and they know how to do that well. What's different today is that we have a serious health threat. We're operating, as I heard one doctor say last night, it's not an emergency, this is a disaster. And so we really need to think differently about how we show up to work, because we have so many personal concerns. Just think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you're at that bottom level of just saying, am I safe? It's really hard to think about delivering your epic project. So those are the kinds of conversations that we want our leaders and our managers to really start to rethink the way they're supporting their teams. And so we've been doing this in partnership, creating those learning resources, making sure there are leader-led connection points, and that we're equipping our managers in thinking differently about their role today.
Well, Mercedes, I have to say, and you know I'm a big fan of yours, but the stuff that you do is amazing. Your passion for everything that you do comes through so loud and clear. I really enjoyed yesterday's virtual lean-in series that you moderated. I mean, there were so many people on that call. I think there were like 84 people. And these are members of Women in Technology, the WIT group at NetApp. Question I've had, do I let, I can't get my hair colored right now, right? So do I let myself go au naturel? And one of the men said, well, I did that a long time ago. And I'm like, yes, but wait, you're a man and you look distinguished. Whereas, a woman, it can be an ageism thing.
That was a virtual conversation meant to have that kind of discussion, right? That create that safe space. And so I'm glad that you shared that, because I think we all needed a moment to be vulnerable and say, look, these are challenging times. And that's what every organization should be looking at doing right now. And we all are questioning how we show up, how we're present, how we represent ourselves. I've started to wear every NetApp polo I have in the closet, because it's a way for me to be super comfortable and professional. But I think that those kinds of questions are important. And the fact that we had a very diverse audience dial in meant that employees wanted that touch point. So I was really happy to have all the male allies who participated.
Yeah, even fellow A-teamer Dan Isaac was on the call, and he had his kitty come and visit him, which was great to see. So this brings us to a really good place to loop in Chris and Matthew. And if I have not mentioned this before, they are both A-team members, and they are the only male guests we've had on the Tint podcast since our very first episode when John Troyer helped us kick off the series. So Chris and Matt, you do not work from home routinely, first of all. And second of all, it's really not a thing for the companies that you work for. And you were both directly involved in helping enable your businesses, your company, to provide the equipment and the technology needed so that you could, in fact, enable people to work remotely. So I would love to have you guys start by telling us how you're coping with work from home, and then tell us what was it that you had to do to make sure everybody else could as well. So who wants to start?
I'll
Chris
jump
Olsen
in there.
Steps forward. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, as you mentioned, I definitely am not a veteran work from home employee. I do a little bit in the morning and just sort of get my day prepped, and the thought was that would translate into an earlier departure time that never quite panned out. But anyway, that's another story. But yeah, so it definitely was a big transition. And honestly, when I first got started, I sort of fell into the same routine that I had before. I'd just sort of hang out in our common area, do some emails, do some calls, and then pretty soon that was not scaling out when your meeting was back-to-back WebExes and trying to keep a camera balanced on a coffee table with dogs and cats and teenagers. It was not panning out. So that that was a pretty short-lived endeavor. I'm now actually working in our bumper tow camper.
They didn't ban you altogether, did they?
Hopefully I didn't make everyone mad enough to make this a permanent situation. But yeah, I'm just grateful that we have it, and it's worked out well. I've got a nice little workstation set up, and I can do my job and help support folks. One of the interesting things about Los Alamos is that we actually have a pretty active COVID-19 response. There's a lot of work that's going on in the form of computer modeling, and a lot of what we do great. They're taking that technology and that science and applying it to this devastating challenge that the world's facing. So those are the big brain PhD folks who that's not me, but are in my role. We're able to sort of make sure that the infrastructure and the connectivity and the tools that they need to be able to get their jobs done are available. So that's given me purpose these last couple weeks, which has been great.
Now, you mentioned that there's been some impact personally to your family. I think your daughter had something going on that she had to postpone. So I wanted you to tell us about that. But what I loved was you showing us the brackets that your son created. Tell us what he did.
I mean, basically what ended up happening was I was bemoaning the loss of my third monitor that I have at home or at work. And my son was looking at my setup and he's like, well, you use your phone a lot for meetings. Why don't we figure out a way you can get your phone set up permanently? So he actually 3D printed some little brackets to hold my phone above my laptop screen. So now I have a 27-inch monitor, a 14-inch monitor on the laptop, and whatever an iPhone XR is.
Very good. I thought that was so clever. And just your kids are both very talented. And what was happening with your daughter?
Well, she was actually going to be taking a gap semester and going to Australia, and she was going to be working koala sanctuary, doing rehabilitation stuff. So,
and I was very
rough.
Envious.
Yeah. I mean,
having to give that up, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, so that was tough, and my wife actually was furloughed as part of all this as well. I mean, it wasn't a major blow to us. I mean, I know there's a lot of families out there who are struggling with, not just someone who's maybe working part-time in the house, but the main breadwinner being, set aside job-wise, and it's tough. So, I mean, that's definitely been an adjustment for us.
Matthew, how about you? Tell us what's happening in your neck of the woods. And so I should mention that Matthew is based in the UK, whereas Chris is right there in New Mexico. So things are a little different over there. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, things are a little bit different. I saw a very interesting statistic for the UK, where it's only 30% of people had ever worked from home before. So you can imagine the jump or the change really for people for the other.
So never worked at home at all, like as in not even a couple of days a week.
No.
Wow.
No, it's not in our culture as much as say the US, for example. And so for my company, we're pretty much the same. We have never been working from home. We're 135 years old, and I think this is the first time that anyone's truly working from home. For the UK, we've actually shut down all of our sites, and that's 550 people, where we've got around about 300 people able to work from home. So we turned that around from the decision to the time when people start working from home within about 4 days. The good thing though is we're a global company, so I've been designing the systems with global sort of reach in mind. So that's really helped. We have Google, we have Citrix, those kind of things. So that allows us to present it out. And then I think our biggest challenge really was space. So people, I'm lucky enough to have my own home office. I think actually to digress, I think I've been preparing for this my whole life. I have all monitors. I have cables that I've been giving out to my friends, power cables, VGA cables. I have
the word nerd does come to mind. That's something. I mean, yeah, you've kind of grown up that way. I would say, and I mean that in the nicest way.
Matthew, didn't you build your own desk like from scratch? I'm just going to say, like,
yes,
not just technical, but like serious DIY status for Matt.
Yep, I've built my own desk. It's about 8 foot long, have all different stations on it. So my workstation, I got a couple of laptops here. I got a bunch of Cisco equipment. And also, I guess, I was homeschooled, so for me, working from home is not
Oh,
too much of an issue.
that's interesting.
I really enjoy being at home, less people to distract me.
I love the fact that I just learned something new about you that I did not know. Yeah, because of course, parents today are having to homeschool their kids and
Yes.
potentially, hold down a full-time job. So there are definitely some challenges. But so, okay, Matthew, do you feel like you shared everything you could have with us about, how is it affecting things at home, or, what are your routines that are different?
Well, my routine is definitely different. So I was commuting about 3 hours a day,
Oof,
and I've
wow.
got that time back now. So it's nice. Yeah, I mean, I wake up about the same time, but have coffee, more relaxed, and in my evenings are much more open. So that's nice because I don't finish at 5 generally. I finish
Yeah,
around 6, which means I get home about 7:30.
yeah. And what
Um,
about Emily? How are things going for her?
yeah, pretty good, pretty good. I've managed to set up all our computers and
Good,
get
good.
her on the VPN, even though I don't work for that company.
Oh, good. Oh, geez.
Um,
Okay.
she's
Great.
adjusting. She's adjusting fairly well, but she's much more of a people person. She's
Ah,
a marketing manager, and she loves talking and chatting, and and I think that's kind of something that I've learned from her, and I'm trying to implement it with my own team. Touch on what Mercedes said. We've kind of gone from we're all in the office to a totally distributed working, a team overnight, essentially. So I'm trying to learn. You need to communicate. You need to, have that face to face. Encourage people to get on, get on the conference call and get on, picture, video and all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Checking in every day because I think it can be very easy for people to get isolated. So I am trying to work on that. And as a business, we've also seen that. So we haven't gone to the level that NetApp has gone to, and I've already learned some things today. But we are looking to get people into those calls, set up the managers a little bit better. But also, they've just set up a new service where if you just want to chat, you can call up certain people in the company, have a little bit of a water cooler chat and that kind of stuff. So I think that's very good.
That's good.
My general day to day hasn't changed much. I'm still as in demand as I have been, much like Chris, on calls all the time.
Yeah. Saving the world. So Matthew, I want to say that since you joined the A team, which was how many years ago now? 4 years ago?
No, I think it's only about 2. We're coming up to just
Seems
about
like
2.5,
4.
I think. Well, I think maybe it seems like forever, so that's a good thing, right?
Well, yes, yeah, it just seems like you have been around forever, but I have really noticed your growth in terms of your willingness to be on camera, do this podcast. I mean, you are definitely more outspoken, and I'm proud of that for you. And I think it's a testament to the community that you guys have on the A team as well.
Oh,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, definitely at the start, I have this fear of not knowing anything and being like, asking stupid questions and saying the wrong thing. But, the team is all very good and mentoring and,
well, except
everyone
for
else sort of.
Chris, right? No, I'm kidding.
Oh yeah, I do have a rep.
So we're going to move on to a segment that we don't often have the privilege of including, which is questions from the Twitterverse. I had a brainstorm. It's like, this is a topic that a lot of people have a lot to say on. So I threw up a request on Twitter and said, hey, what should we be asking Mercedes and Matthew and Chris on the podcast? And I was pleasantly surprised by the number of people that submitted a question. We had Donnie Lang, Ryan Uris, Rory McBride, Kirsten Nelson, Dave Brown, Philip Hardy, Becky Elliott, Phoebe Go, Sean Luce. I mean, I can keep going, but it was just a flood of questions. So given the time frame that we have, I'm going to hone in on a couple of them. But, I think the topic of distractions comes up a lot, in which for me, again, I'm just so, I don't know, I guess the word is disciplined. I'm not, patting myself on the back, but I've been doing this for so long. I actually have to force myself to get up and go get food, because I come into my office, I shut the door and boom, I'm just, going at it all day. But for others who are just adjusting to this, it's not the case. So who would like to respond to that question in terms of, how you're dealing with the distractions that are coming up? Or are you not? Or what are they?
Yeah, so as I referenced earlier, I had sort of started out in the house, and that definitely was not conducive to being able to stay focused. Distractions were there. It was still productive, but just was, there's no such thing as multitasking. It's just splitting your attention back and forth, 100 times a second. So I think definitely as you can, and I have the benefit of having the space that I have, being able to be focused. But the distractions are not necessarily all bad, as you said, Sam. I mean, that sit down and bang away for hours and hours is a pretty easy mode to get into, but it's not good for physical health, mental health, or anything. So letting yourself break away from time to time, I think, is time well spent as well.
Mercedes,
And I will say, yeah, because I'll add on to that, and I think Chris has a point. He's found a way to isolate himself in order to focus, because a lot of the distractions right now are unexpected, right? My cats are my coworkers today, and I don't really want to lock them in a room. So I've had to redesign my workspace to eliminate some of the distractions or eliminate their access. That doesn't mean they don't still try to jump on my lap. I did literally have a squirrel come in the house the other day when I left the door open. So literally squirrel distraction. But there's a couple of things to consider, right? There's visual distractions. What do I see in my workspace today? And if I wander away, do I see dirty dishes in the sink? And then normally when I'm at home, dirty dishes mean dishwashing time, or, oh, it's trash day. Maybe I need to take out the trash. So there's those visual distractions, and then there's auditory distractions. If the radio's playing and I hear a certain tone of voice, do I think, the governor or the president is making an important announcement? And so we need to manage those. I've taken to, when I need a little energy, it's Lizzo in the background. When I need to focus, right, it's the meditation music. But I'll just give the advice that we each need to discover new mental guardrails, because I am telling myself, if I walk to the kitchen to refresh my tea, it is work time. It is not dish time. And so I'm instituting these mental guardrails. And what helps me is that concept of time. There is a time to do the dishes, and it is no longer between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. So dishes are off limits. And so that's my coaching around distractions, is to start to think about, if you are in your home space, when is the right time to deal with the home distractions, and what are you actually trying to accomplish right now?
So that also, I think, comes to setting a schedule, right? And setting boundaries, which are really important. And Cecilia, you came up with a very clever way to handle the distractions that can happen in your home. Tell us about the gadget that you procured.
So one of the things that I noticed is, even though I have a designated workspace, is that families don't really always respect that space. So, but they can be coached. So I went on Amazon and purchased a colored lamp. It's very difficult to see on the video, but it does change colors. In fact, there's a green light here. You can't really see the green because I'm using a green screen. Interesting. But it also has a remote control, so you can see all the lights there.
See that? See all the colors?
And then you can.
I'm purple.
So I place the lamp on the corner of the desk. So even if the door is open or closed, they can visually see whether I'm on a call or not. $10 item. It made a world of difference, because without explanation or having to go into, oh, I'm on a call right now, they're able to say, okay, I can't be, she's not to be distracted right now. Or if there's a green light, speak up, or, I'm not busy. Or if it's a purple light and I'm talking to Sam, you can interrupt, you can come on screen, it doesn't matter.
I love to see the family, as a matter of fact. So let's take I guess it's a little bit more serious, but what is it? Well, okay. Is there anything you've learned about yourself that you didn't know before you started working from home?
I might not be compelled I might not be compelled to shower every day unless I'm just going to say, I'd never realized that my own personal hygiene would come into question, but I have a strict shower every 2-day policy. I told Matthew this, we were trading some messages earlier, but I actually, because I'm isolated, there's nobody here, right? The cats don't care.
Yep.
So, but it goes back to that, having a routine. And I really had to rethink my routine and how to stay, my own well-being, because the draw is just to come to the desk and work, because that's where I find people in my day now is, I can wave at my neighbors from a socially distant 6 feet, but now that they've asked us to start to wear bandanas, I basically look like I'm going to rob my neighbors. So this is where I find the most friendly people at work. And so just establishing the routine around as well, when it's okay to come and sit down and work, and when I need to shut off and disconnect and switch into, family mode, friend mode. So those are probably two things is I needed to switch that routine up really to address the new reality.
I would agree with that as well. Previously in my role as as a head of support and that kind of thing, I was looking at the infrastructure for our global organization, and I'm looking at my phone 24. Well, when I'm awake, I'm usually looking at my work phone is usually there, ready and waiting. But it's so easy to just go, oh, I'll just spend 5 more minutes on the computer, and then it's 10 more, 20 more, and I don't have that distraction when I leave work. I'm on the bus, I'm listening to podcasts or I'm listening to music, and I kind of distract myself and then sort of wind down and disconnect. I'm on it all the time now, and it really takes away from personal time, and I'm learning that I need to shut off and say, that's it now, I'm done. Finish at 5.
It's stressful. That's something I mentioned earlier, is I'm noticing that people are expecting you to be available for a much longer day. And, I have to now more or less force myself to get up and go out and take a walk, or, just move around a little bit, because, sitting all the time, as you know, is not healthy. And it's something that we really need to be cognizant of. Mercedes?
Well, can I add on to that? Because this is something that I'm just going to add as the sanity challenge, right? Because like Matthew, it's really easy for me to just focus on work and not well-being. So something that I've been trying to do very intentionally now is challenge myself, where my step goal used to be like 13,000 steps a day. And I was going to the office and walking, but no, it's not that much. So, 5 or 6 miles a day. But Matthew, you're talking about your commute, right? There was a lot of stuff that we were doing that gave us steps. And I decided, instead of just sitting on my goal, the way I would challenge myself is to raise my goal to 15,000 steps. And so this is part of my sanity health check, is that I really need to amp up those personal goals. Otherwise, work is going to overtake life. And so I wanted to mention that, because I think that's a strategy you can think about. Can you set some personal goals that are measurable? And then you can basically see, am I being effective in my personal life right now when work could be such a draw? And it feels like an emergency, right? Work feels like an emergency now in this situation. So
yes.
That's a suggestion.
That's very true. That's very true. So one person I forgot to mention was Paul Stringfellow, one of our fellow A-Team members. He threw in a few questions as well. And he was asking, is there anything that you've implemented now? Do you think that when we return, hopefully we will be returning to some level of normalcy again, although even as I say that, I think we'll have a new normal. What's going to remain in place? What do you guys feel like you've started to implement that you will be conscious of later? I realize you have to kind of like make a leap of faith, because who knows what things will be like. But does anything come to mind?
I think for us, it's what I'm hoping for is that we really do develop a more mature work from home policy, procedure, culture. I mean, I've sort of been part of the pilot program, if you will, and been doing that, and I consider it to be successful. And I hope that that going through this, that what we can take away from it is we can all learn how to be, more engaged, more plugged in, even if we are not on site. And hopefully that will translate into our organization recognizing the value and what this could provide in terms of flexibility for our workforce.
What I'm hoping that will come out of this with is, number one, a greater understanding and flexibility that working from home offers. I think there's a lot of managers out there who do feel like they have to have face time. And I think that this new norm has changed their perceptions of what face time really is. FaceTime doesn't necessarily mean that we're physically in the same space, but that we're connecting and that we're having more conversations where we're literally chatting more than it's because you see me at my desk. The other thing that I'm really hoping that we get out of this is we become more empathetic as people. I think I've seen more expressions of generosity from people for their neighbors, for their coworkers, understanding a little bit more about who each of us is as a person and not
Right.
just as an employee.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that that sense of connection continues with us in this new norm, where we're more flexible and more understanding of our coworkers and our suppliers and our partners. I'm really hoping that that positivity will continue into this new normal.
Yeah, as the only full-time remote worker in this little group of ours here, I am definitely hoping that the stigma of being that, that remote person thousands of miles away from everybody else will be lifted, and that I can have the same consideration, or people will value the efforts that I put in as much as the people who have that opportunity to come into the office every day. Frankly, I consider myself extremely lucky not to have to make that commute every day. As somebody with ADHD, limiting my distractions, and I go to the office and it's a party for me because I don't get to see people, so I'm catching up with this one and that one, and I consider my time in Sunnyvale, it's not a write-off, gosh, I would never want to say that, but it's very hard for me to like hone in and do any quote unquote real work, because the whole thing is social. So yeah, so that's kind of my thought on that. But we've been talking quite a bit. I think we could go on for another hour, but we probably should be wrapping this up with kind of our fun segment of this podcast. And Cecilia, what's it going to be today?
Well, I've been thinking about this, and especially as we're looking from the work from home aspect of it. And, at some point, this too shall pass. We will start to go out. We will start to think of other things. But in the meanwhile, we can plan that dream vacation. So my question is this: if you had the opportunity, once we're past all of this, to go to your dream destination for a vacation, where would you go? As you can see, I've selected a little bit of a Caribbean type of feel. I want to go to the Bahamas real bad. So I am hoping that one day I'll be able to make that trip. Anybody else?
Well, John and I, my husband and I, would love to be able to do a cruise again. I know everyone's probably horrified as they hear me say that, but it's something that we love to do so much. And, we love, frankly, the time that we spend on the boat. As much as we do visiting. For our honeymoon, we went on a tour of the Mediterranean, and Greece, my goodness, I'd go back to Greece and Italy, and it was just an amazing trip. And so, we won't be doing any vacations anytime soon, so we can start, setting aside the money for that cruise. And I think we're probably going to get a good deal. I'm saying probably a good deal. That was a little humor. Very, very not, got to bring a little humor into this, right? Okay. It was probably in bad taste. Sorry. Anyway, who's next?
I can say I don't know if I'd want to go on camper vacation, but
probably not.
I guess top of my list would be to figure out a way to see if I could make the trip for my daughter to Australia work out.
Yeah.
That'd be the top of my list.
Oh, what a nice daddy. Next, Matthew.
Hello.
Hello. Have you thought about this?
Well, now you've just sprung it on me. We obviously had plans this summer. A couple of things. One of my best friends, he is already married, but he was having the wedding sort of celebration, if you like, in America.
The party. Yeah.
Yep. This August, so I was hoping to go there. That would be very nice. But actually, most of all, what I was looking forward to is going on holiday with my very good friends and my godson and his brother in Sardinia, a small island off the coast of Italy.
Nice.
And I'm hoping that will happen because I while we do see them, spending sort of a week, 2 weeks just with them, chilling out, it's a great time to connect. So fingers crossed, we'll get there at some point. That's my dream, I guess. Yeah, sure we can.
A couple of weeks sounds good.
A couple of weeks with very close friends and family. Very nice.
Sounds lovely. Mercedes, I think I know where you're going, but just kind of tell us.
What else can I say but that I'm definitely flying to Belgium. I mean, it's not really the vacation, but to the international relationship that I've had for the last year. We were traveling to spend time together once a month. And so we spent time really all over the world in the US and Europe and did a lot of amazing trips together. And one thing that we did last summer, which was really fun, was actually, I'm going to give a shout out to Heather Doyle at NetApp, is go visit her at Cape Cod. And so just have a beautiful Cape Cod beach vacation, totally relaxed.
Wait a minute. You were on the Cape and you didn't let me know you were there. What?
So what? I will tell you next time. Absolutely.
Okay. Good.
It was really interesting that I was not in control of my own destiny because Heather invited my very good friend MJ Schmidt, who came up from the DC area to visit, and so it was really wonderful yet tremendously busy time. And so I'm having Cape Cod dreams here, so that might be whenever we're allowed to travel again, somewhere that I'd like to go.
Yeah, the Cape is great. Wow. Okay. I think we have covered a lot of ground today. And, lob it over to you, Cecilia.
Well, you're right. And I think that's a wrap for this episode of the 10 Podcast. We want to thank Mercedes, Chris, and Matthew for joining us. And to our listeners out there, we know you have a bunch of podcasts you could be listening to, especially during this time. And we're glad you add us to your list of must-listen cues.
Must listen.
We'd love to hear your feedback. What works? What doesn't? What would you like to hear from us? Drop us an email at ng-10podcast@netapp.com or just reach out to either one of us on the Twitters at Cecilia Taylor or at Sam Moulton.
Samantha, what? Were you going to use the Samantha word?
Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care.
All right.